But first, I'm Gabriella Ailstock. I'm one of the coordinators of the UAV for Payload Delivery Working Group, or UPDWG as we call it for short. We are a global community of stakeholders who are interested in accelerating the use of drone delivery in health systems. Our mission is really to provide value for our member network of nearly 400 individuals all around the world, many of which you are in the working group as well. And we really are a knowledge and resource sharing platform for our members. We have a very large resource hub online, and we try to accelerate the use of evidence throughout the Drones for Health ecosystem. We also provide a lot of value for our members through partner coordination and connecting people through online events and webinars and workshops, and also through a drone evidence database, which I will speak to you all a little bit more about today. So we at UPDWG believe that drones have the potential to play a transformative role in health supply chains around the world. And this is particularly true in healthcare, where drones can help overcome many logistics challenges in low and middle income countries and high income countries. And they have the potential to save lives and improve timely access to medicines, equipment, and medical facilities. And this really should be a rallying point for industry and governments. Because drone delivery provides us with an opportunity to rethink our entire health supply chains, and specifically the infrastructure needed to deliver for these next generation supply chains. But all of that being said, the lack of data and evidence on how drone delivery operations have actually impacted and improved supply chain performance, the cost of actually operating those supply chains with drones, and how ultimately they could affect health impact is really hindering their adoption around the world. Many governments and donors and other people in the industry who are looking to procure drone services for health systems are asking for this evidence before they make these big decisions about integrating drones into their supply chains, which is very reasonable. But unfortunately, many of us don't actually have that evidence to give them, especially that evidence on long-term operations and operations at scale, rather than just modeled evidence, modeled data, or just data on short pilot programs. And we really see this as one of the core limiting factors in the adoption of drones more globally. And just to cement this even further, in 2020, the ISG UAS coordinating body, which is a group that convenes 14 of the biggest international donors around the world, surveyed its members to find out what they believe are the primary challenges in scaling and sustaining drone operations in low and middle income countries. The #1 response that they submitted was the lack of published evidence on the impact drones can have in health systems. And so you can imagine these 14 donors, who honestly are funding much of the drone operations around the world right now, or have a piece in funding those operations, are begging and asking for this evidence so that they can make these decisions. And so you can imagine that governments and others are also really needing this evidence to be able to accelerate the use of drones. So in 2019, the ISG UAS coordinating body, UPDWG and Village Reach, began a collaboration to help close this evidence gap. So we collaboratively developed 2 tools that can help organizations implementing drone delivery projects, drone service providers, and governments, and anybody else who's involved in this drone industry, to generate more and better quality data and evidence on their operations. And we developed a tool and publicly share that evidence so that others can utilize it, so that we as an industry as a whole can work together to close this medical drone evidence gap. We embarked on this journey with the end vision in mind that all stakeholders will be able to make evidence-based funding and programming decisions on drone delivery introduction, scale up, and sustainability to build more effective and resilient healthcare delivery systems that can reach all people around the world. So now I'll introduce you a little bit to both of these tools that I just mentioned. The first tool is called the Drone Evidence Generation Toolkit. And this toolkit was first released in 2019. It provides resources and guidance to help implementers learn how to collect the right data on their drone delivery operations so that stakeholders can make those evidence-based decisions once they do collect that data. This first version of the toolkit, since it was released in 2019, really focused its resources on short-term drone delivery operations, pilot programs, a lot of people also call them, and really had a lot of resources for how you collect data for those pilots. And that really was because in 2019, there were not a lot of longer-term or larger-scale drone delivery operations out there for us to base these resources on. This is a very collaborative toolkit that we have gotten guidance and utilized what others are doing to collect this evidence. At that time, there were no published studies on long-term, large-scale drone delivery operations for us to really even know how we should collect that evidence. And then 1 year later, we launched another tool called the Medical Drone Delivery Database, or the MD3 for short. The MD3 is a user-generated database for drone implementations and to share your drone projects and the evidence that's generated in those drone projects with the world. It's an online platform that's free to access. And really the purpose of this MD3 is to help promote transparent evidence sharing across our sector. So these tools were really developed to complement each other with one shared end vision. And they really do go hand in hand together. The Drone Evidence Generation Toolkit can help you learn how to collect that data, while the Medical Drone Delivery Database gives you a platform to share that data. And they really are interlinked. And one of the big reasons why we also developed this Medical Drone Delivery Database was to help kind of incentivize people to share their data by giving them promotion of their projects as well too, and providing them with a place where other people can access what they've been doing, access their contact information. And this is especially important for drone service providers, I believe, because it really can help them promote their great work that they're doing and put some facts and some figures behind their operations as well too, so that people can really see the truth in what they're doing, because there's tons of people doing a lot of really impressive work out there. So after we launched these tools, and especially as we were launching the Medical Drone Delivery Database and collecting a lot of this data from drone service providers and other implementers, we started to notice that most people had pretty good data on their flight operations. So how many flights they did, how far they flew, what speed, how much payload they carried. But very few people had quality data on the effect that drones had on supply chain performance, health outcomes, and how much these projects cost to implement. So after in 2021, and after we developed both of these tools, and after there was some more data in the industry coming out of these longer term drone projects, specifically in Malawi and Madagascar as well too, we revised the toolkit and just released the second version of this Drone Evidence Generation Toolkit, which has really expanded its contents. The second version is updated with new resources and recommendations on how to improve the completeness of this data that we are collecting in the Medical Drone Delivery Database, with a renewed focus on longer-term drone delivery operations. So let me start by introducing you a bit further on when and how to use the drone evidence generation toolkit first. So drone delivery projects from the outset should have plans to evaluate the results of their projects, depending on what phase they're in, so that you can determine if your project is working, if it's having the desired results that you would like to achieve, and evaluate that if you should scale your project and sustain your project as well too. So this toolkit can really, one of its first things that it can be used for is to actually design your drone delivery project so that you can have that desired outcome. And it can help you shape the project to plan properly, especially to resource what you need to do in order to collect this quality data that really is needed by the end of your project to show if you're having your desired outcome. So this toolkit contains a couple of tools to help you do that in the beginning of your project before you ever even start flights. The first one is really a logical framework, and that's what this top photo is, the blue on the screen. So a logical framework is just a roadmap for your activities, your outputs, and your outcomes that your project wants to achieve. It helps guide you through that project. This can really be so the toolkit contains logical frameworks for different of drone operations, and that can really be used as a starting point for designing your project. Implementers can also consider factors unique to their context or use case to adapt these logical frameworks and also adapt them based on the type of medical product that you are delivering and those results that you do want to achieve. The framework gives sample activities appropriate to the maturity of operations and the outputs and short-term outcomes that should be achieved. The next tool that can be used prior to when you're starting your project and throughout your project are sample evaluation questions. They're high-level questions to help guide your data collection and criteria to consider before you progress to that next phase. These are really discussion questions that you can have with your primary stakeholders throughout the project, which can guide the decisions for improving project performance, whether to recommend scaling to the next phase. For example, these evaluation questions can help you understand if drones have if they have not improved the desired target outcome. And the drone delivery system can be further optimized to help you achieve that, or whether complementary interventions are also needed to address the supply chain challenge. We also have key performance indicators, which are just how specific examples of how you can exactly measure the results of your project. And you'll see here on the bottom right-hand corner in the gold color, you'll see some of these example indicators in the toolkit. It provides you with a definition of the indicator, and it also provides you with sample data collection tools so that you can actually measure these indicators and gives really concrete examples and context on how you actually go about measuring this. And this is really important because one other thing that we've noticed a lot is that different people measure the same thing in different ways. So that when you are showing your results and publicizing your results, you might be saying the same thing, but really it could be two totally different numbers that you're looking at. So it's really hard to compare across drone delivery projects. So these tools can be used before you start your project and also can be used throughout your project while you are evaluating your work. I mentioned before, the type of outcome that you can expect from your project and the type of data that you need to collect for your project is highly dependent on the maturity of your drone operations. If you're in a pilot stage, you're going to want to collect very different data and expect very different results than if you're doing a 1+ year project delivering to hundreds of health facilities or hundreds of locations. So one of the tools that the toolkit has is this decision tree, which can help you identify where you should start and where your project actually is landing on these phases that we have defined, which then can help you guide you through the toolkit to the appropriate resources. And so now let me go a little bit more further into the medical drone delivery database and when and how you can use this. So before you actually start implementing drones, you can use the medical drone delivery database to explore what else is out there, which is really important to provide you with context on how you could implement your project. You can find who else in your country is doing drone delivery projects. You might be able to identify which drone service providers are operating in the country that you live or in neighboring countries or other places around the world, and be able to see what their performance in those places have been so that you can better evaluate and contract them and see if they will be able to perform in your context as well too. You can also identify other partners who are working on drone delivery projects if you'd like to partner with them as well. Or you might like to get some technical advice from them based on their similar projects on how you could implement your projects. And you can also see what other people have achieved, and specifically a lot of reports and evidence that they have generated so that you can start internalizing that and applying that to your own work so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So then during and after your implementation, you can use the medical drone delivery database to share your work. We don't always recommend to people that they can only submit when they're finished with their project. We actually recommend that you submit as you're going so that you can get your work out there. People can see that you're operating on a routine basis, and you can start submitting your updates to your data monthly, quarterly, biannually, whatever sort of cadence you would like. And then after your implementation, we definitely ask people to submit their results to the medical drone delivery database so that you can publicize your work. You can be found as a new partner. You can be found as a new drone service provider, and other people can come to you for those advisory skills. So these are diving a little bit deeper. Actually, let me go back one slide. You see here on the right-hand side, this is a screenshot of the online database where you can explore through the map and click on the pins to see what operations are happening in that country, or you can filter by the country, the year of operations, if they're ongoing or completed, or what phase of work they are at. So once you click on one of these pins, it launches you into the full details of that project. And so these are just an example of some of the details. This isn't everything about what type of data and evidence we are collecting in the medical drone delivery database. And you'll see here that all of these indicators that we collect are directly linked to the evidence generation toolkit, so that you have precise examples on how to collect that data and then a precise way to report that data in a shareable and comparable platform. So we look at some flight metrics like total number of successful flights, maximum payload carried, maximum distance achieved, maximum flight speed. We look at the type of flight permissions that are secured, the location of flight permissions, what level of stakeholder engagement that was conducted, and then very importantly, what type of results were measured and what kind of references to those results that you have. And these references to findings are really the meat of this data. It's nice to see that, oh, great, you collected data on transportation time, but unless you have any context about, well, what is the change in transportation time? How did you measure this? Where were you transporting to? And all of that is really found in these references. And so without those references, the data really lacks the complexity and the insight that otherwise it would. We also collect a lot of data on the drone technology itself that was used. Excuse me for just a sorry about that. So we collect data on the drone technology so that you could potentially utilize this as a platform to find technology that you might want to use and see how successful the technology has been. So let me give you a little peek into all of the data in the summary of what is in the medical drone delivery database. We've documented nearly 200,000 flights around the world, one-way flights, across 46 projects. Most of these are VTOL fixed-wing deliveries happening, primarily in East Africa and Europe, but that is growing and diversifying every day. And you'll see that 91% of these are BVLOS flights. So that's definitely one indication of kind of the maturity of the industry that we are seeing. But all of this and more can be found in the database itself, which is on updog.org. So just closing up, how can you help support our mission of closing this drone evidence generation gap? You can utilize the evidence generation toolkit to inform your project design and how you evaluate the project. And you can provide us feedback if you use this on how it went. What did you change? How did you adapt it? So that we can continuously update this toolkit and provide more and better resources to all of you based on your experience. You can also, very importantly, submit your data to the medical drone delivery database. So you'll see down here on our website, UPDWG.org, on the MD3 here, you can submit your data online, and you also have a link to the evidence generation toolkit to learn how to collect and submit your data. And if you're in a position to have power over what type of data people collect, you can incentivize, either if you're a grantee or if you're contracting drone service providers, you can incentivize them to collect and share this data in a better and more transparent way. Through your contracting is one big way that you can do that. And then if you would like support utilizing these tools, we have resources to help you do this and to walk you through the tools or to help you even adapt them for your own context. So we're happy to do that. You can email us at info@updwg.org in order to access that and to have us help you. And you can also join our mailing list and our working group if you'd like to get more updates on these tools and when new entries are added to the medical drone delivery database. And you can find these resources on our website and in presentation will be online when we're done today. So that is it for me, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Gabriella. That was so insightful. And there's so much that you all have already put up, and something that we can just pick up and start using in our projects. So, Gabriella, how does one begin? Like, if a government is trying to start a drone service, what is it we as consultants should start with? What is the first document that we should advise them to create?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you should really do is to look at the logical frameworks in the evidence generation toolkit, because depending on what outcomes the government wants to achieve really affects everything that you do in your project. And so by using these logical frameworks for you as a consultant to help the government think through exactly what they do want to achieve and work backwards to say, okay, if you do want to achieve this, what do we need to do in order to do that? What activities do we need to do? What outputs, what results do we need to actually physically complete in order to achieve those outcomes is a really good step and a really nice way for you to think through the project fully before you start contracting a drone service provider. Because depending on what those results that you want to achieve can really depend on what type of technology you use. If you want to deliver heavier products, you're going to need a different type of technology. If you want to deliver bulky products to far places, you're going to need a different type of technology. So that's one really great step for you to help think through that project planning.
Thanks, Gabriella. We have a hand raise from David. David, would you like to unmute yourself?
Thanks, Dr. Rishi. Thanks so much for your brilliant presentation. I've got the same sort of lurgy, so bear with me. I'm also, I note how much in awe I am of the efforts by UpDog and by Village Reach. My question, I asked this, I think yesterday at the conference as well, and that is about the creation of a community of practice. And I'm very well aware of the efforts that Village Reach and UpDog's gone to. What brought me to a different area was some questions from a developing East African Civil Aviation Authority, some requests about some drone approvals, and then that went to the Regional Safety Oversight Organisation, and then who do they ask and who provides them with help? And remembering that a lot of sophisticated CAAs have national desks, but they need to get funding, so they charge for the help. So I was wondering, I don't know what your views are, but is there a way we could expand the UpDog efforts, the MD3, to perhaps even include stakeholders like We Robotics Flying Labs, and also to have a community of practice for particularly CAAs in the low to middle income countries to be able to reach out for help from those who have a fair amount of well-resourced and a lot of capacity, if you get the idea there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, David. I do think already that UpDog does play that role a little bit for those who do know about us. But I will admit that not every Flying Labs is a member of UpDog. Many are. Not every CAA is, but a few are as well too. And particularly like the Malawi CAA, who has a really robust drone program and is very advanced in some regards, is very involved in the working group, and the drone lead is actually one of our advisors. So I do think that we can play kind of informally that role in that connecting role already. But I do agree that one thing that I could see as a real need in our community is having more of a direct space for people to communicate and people to collaborate, and kind of that kind of working group, as you called it. That is something that UpDog has thought about doing in the future as well. So it's a good note to think that you might think that is needed as well. And if others also think that would be a role that UpDog could play, that helps me kind of push that forward on our agenda as well too. So great idea. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gabby, for the answer. And I just have to point out that because of Village Reach's independence, that's a really important stage. A really important role, and then you'd be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Any more questions and comments? So, Gabriel, how do we convince our government to adopt these standards?
Yeah, that's the real question. And I'm not even sure that it's the government who needs to adopt these for it to be implemented. I think that we as implementing bodies and us as drone service providers as well too can push that agenda forward ourselves. I don't necessarily think that it needs to be a mandate from the government and push down. Sometimes we can also can elevate up by our actions rather than our convincing. And so if others already start collecting this data on their own, which we have lots of tools to help you do that in a manageable way, I think, and show the government what type of data we're collecting and really set sense for this is what we think as an industry we should be doing, I think that will automatically eventually start rolling up to higher bodies and governing bodies to say, okay, maybe these are some standards that we should also cement more so now that we do see that they're already happening in the industry.
Thank you so much, Gabriella. That's very wise of you to say that. So we would be closing in your presentation now. And I urge everyone to keep in touch with Gabriella and what we do at UpDog. And I think we have regular meetups and presentations and webinars and a lot of activities happening. They have a great newsletter, which is full of resources. And I make sure that every time it comes, I'm the first one to hit it and check it out. So I'm sure that you will all find a lot of wisdom there. Be a part of that activity. It's amazing. Really, really, really great. That's something that you're doing, Gabriella, and I'm an absolute fan of everything that you guys do.